Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this world. Once again, it's John West here with you for Japanese Business and Economy. Yes, as I said, John West here with you for Japanese Business and Economy. And we're going to look at the third segment of Class 7. So Class 7C, I call this Japanese Seniors to the Rescue. Now, we've been talking about in many of our classes, Japan's aging population, declining working age population, labour shortages, and so on. And so the topic continues, and this is a very interesting topic because as Japan is facing more and more labour shortages, more and more older workers are getting jobs. Now, economists talk about the working age population as between the age of 15 and 64. And that's what we've been talking about. But the reality is many Japanese people above the age of 64 are working, and more of them are doing so. In fact, the employment rate of men and women in their 60s has risen since the turn of the century, 20 years ago, reversing the long-term decline that began in 1970. Look at this lady doing ironing of clothes. She's probably working in a textile or clothing factory and ironing the garments that have been produced. Now let's turn to the next page. Look very closely at this chart. It's fascinating. On the left-hand side, you'll see men. Right-hand side, you'll see women. Now look at the red line, 65 to 69. That means ages 65 to 69. And what you see there is from about the year 2000 through till the year 2017, there's been quite an increase in the participation rate, the working rate of Japanese men in the economy. Seniors above the age of 64, working more and more. And then if you look at the green line above that, this is the age 60 to 64. That's still considered to be working age, but it should be the end of the working life in theory. Again, that line has been going up since around the year 2000. So more and more older men working in Japan. Let's have a look on the right-hand side for women. And again, look at the red line. You see the red line is lower down for women, so the participation rate for women is lower than men, but the increase is also pretty marked. And so since the year 2000, more and more women, Japanese women, aged 65 to 69 are working. And the same applies to that green line for the people aged 60 to 64. It's a pity we don't have data for workers above the age of 70, because I'm sure that line would go up too. Now, why are more and more Japanese people working? Why are more and more Japanese seniors working? Now, the OECD, from which I got this information, puts it down to a number of factors. Firstly, improved health and longer longevity. Japanese people are living longer and longer, and so they're healthier and healthier at an old age, and so they're capable of working. Now, since 1970, the life expectancy for someone of 60 years old has risen from 19 to 29 for women and from 16 to 24 for men. What this means is that when you're 60 years old, your life expectancy of 19 means you could live till 79. Conditional life expectancy, we call it. So if you're 60, another 19 years. Now, there's been an add-on of 10 years since 1970. So a Japanese woman at the age of 60 will not live till 79 now, but 89. It's a very old age. And for men, if you're 60, you used to live until 76, another 16 years. Now, Japanese men will live another 24, so 24 on to 60, meaning 84. So longer and longer life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. See this lady in the photo there, she looks pretty healthy. Another factor, of course, is increased educational attainment, particularly amongst the men, dramatic increase in male workers with university degrees. Of course, this means that they're well trained, and so competent workers who can be very useful. Another factor is that there's a transition to less physically demanding jobs. With improved technology, there's much less heavy work to be done and much lighter work, particularly in offices. And so seniors are actually quite able to do this less physically demanding job. There have also been a number of government policy reforms that have encouraged older workers to continue working. For example, in 1995, the government introduced a subsidy equivalent to 15% of the wage to workers between the ages of 60 and 64. Now, overall, the elderly population of Japan, over 65, has an employment rate of 32% for men and 16% for women. And that's around about the OECD average. And so for men over 65, 32% of them are actually working, and 16% of women are actually working. Now, this is around the OECD average, as I mentioned, but it's far below leading countries like in Scandinavia. So this means that actually it's possible that these employment rates go up higher, that over time, over the future, more and more Japanese men and women will work. And there are many things that the government can do to, and companies can do to improve the possibility of higher employment rates for Japanese seniors. And reforming some of the old-fashioned Japanese labour market practices would be certainly one thing. So let's meet some of Japan's seniors.
Tadashi Sato is constantly on the move in his job at Japanese electrical retailer Najima, attending to customers, restocking shelves, and having chats with colleagues. The main difference, though, is that they're in their 20s and 30s, and Tadashi is 72.
I wasn't expecting to still be working at this age. We'd imagined that a person at the age of 72 was someone quite old. But once I turned 72, it wasn't the case. I feel like I'm in my 50s. I want to keep up with young people if I can.
Najima is set to have more store workers of a similar age. In a rare move, Japan's sixth largest home appliances chain operator has made it an official policy to let its workers stay until they turn 80. The scheme, introduced last month, is a result of Japan's population aging and shrinking rapidly. Najima's 3,000 regular employees can now stay on a renewable annual contract once they've hit the company's retirement age of 65.
Now, today's focus, and France is right in the middle of plans to totally reform its pension system. 8 months, in fact, of discussions with social partners underway for a new law. It's on the agenda, in fact, for 2019. Now, the proposal is for a universal pension system. So how might that actually work? Well, Japan has as well announced a similar pension reform, a radical proposal which includes retirement at the age of 71 years or more. And that could mean that many Japanese will be working up to 80 years. Constantin Simon and Bruce Harrison report for France 24.
He can only enjoy the night lights of Tokyo from his taxi. He's one of 50,000 men working in the city's shadows in the largest metropolis in the world.
There's traffic even at this hour.
When he reached retirement age, Katsuyoshi Sudo became a taxi driver. Today, he is 78 years old and works 14 hours every second day.
As the saying goes, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. I'll rest when I die. I will then have eternal vacations.
Like many Japanese, he considers work in absolute terms, and the private company which employs him as a second family.
Good morning.
After a long night working, the taxi drivers still have to clock out. Here, the overwhelming majority of the employees are grandfathers. No age limit in this sector. The company head has fixed his own cap at 80.
You okay?
Not so good.
Come on, cheer up. There used to be many young taxi drivers.
That's true.
Why don't we see them anymore?
Because the job's too hard.
To fight against the shortage of manpower, the Japanese government has just announced a radical reform. In 2020, all the workers in both public and private sectors can, if they wish, retire at 71 years of age or older. The longer they work, the higher their pension. Today, it is 500 euros a month on average, and despite the fatigue, candidates for these jobs are plenty. In Japan, 1/4 of the population is more than 65 years old. It's the most aged country in the world. This reality is particularly visible in certain villages in the region of Fukushima. Here, the families have fled radioactivity, and many retired people decided to get back to work. This former municipal employee has opened this restaurant. Her objective, bring the deserted village back to life, reinforce the spirit of community. It's an instant success.
Us older people, we like this traditional cuisine. It's not the industrial food that is served in restaurant chains.
Of course, it's tiring, but getting compliments from my clients, seeing their smiles, makes me not feel the fatigue. Enjoy your meal. I'm 70 years old, but I feel young. I think that the government's proposal is very good. People have to work after 70. We're in better health than the past generations. And as long as my body's in good health, I want to go on working.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please come back soon.
A happy society where all the generations are active. In Tokyo, this is a proposal made by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to overcome the pension crisis. This economist has written a book on work for senior citizens. He is one of the leading advocates of the reform.
With this current pension system, that younger people contribute to the pension and the elderly people receive the benefit from the pension. At the same time, the aging create a huge problem. And to resolve this pension deficit issue, the increase of the labor force participation rate of elderly people is a critical solution to resolve the issue.
There is no other way.
Well, not much choice.
Whether it is fatalism or pragmatism, the majority of the Japanese support the reform. Even the largest workers' union in the country.
We're fighting to reduce the number of working hours per day. But it's a good thing that the seniors have the possibility of working their whole life if they so wish, as long as they're in good health and that their safety is guaranteed in the place of work.
The workers' unions also hope that working can help the old escape poverty. As of today, 1 out of 5 seniors lives below the poverty line.
So some interesting portraits there of Japanese seniors working and enjoying the fact that they continue working into their 70s and even 80s. And so this is a very important response to Japan's aging population. An aging population actually is a good thing. If we live longer, it's a good thing. We have a longer life. An aging population creates a problem if we retire early and the government has to pay for our pensions, pay for our healthcare, and if the economy cannot benefit from our contribution. But when older people work longer and longer, that is a great way to compensate for the economic effects of an aging population. And this is a very positive development here in Japan. So thank you once again for sharing this brief moment with me as we look into the role of Japanese seniors in the Japanese economy, and how Japanese seniors are coming to the rescue of the economy by working longer and longer. And so again, thank you so much for spending this moment with me. If you have any questions, comments, reactions, just send me a message. And of course, when we have our student discussion sessions in mid-January, we can discuss it also. And for the moment, let me say sayonara.